on one of our bills, Senator Rosenwald had some questions, so we invited them in. What bill?
1766.
I had pneumonia last week, so
This
the
was about.
brain is still a little fuzzy.
Do you have a copy of the amendment?
I do not, but
Could you give her one? And it would be line 17 and 18 we'd be looking at.
Attorney General, how the existing statute.
Do
So
we
we're
need to
gonna,
open an executive?
yeah, let's open up execs. Seconded by Senator Avard, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Senator Rosenwald, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. Are you from the judicial?
yes, I serve as Deputy General Counsel for the Judicial Branch. My name is Lauren Warner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I was just, wanted to make sure that by giving these animal cases 14-day priority, I mean, that the case had to be heard within 14 days, and I know there's an amendment that strikes out the 14 days, but give them priority. I wanted to make sure that people's constitutional right to a public and speedy trial would not be further delayed, given the fact that we're already not doing jury trials 4 weeks a year.
Certainly, Senator, thank you for the question. And I did get to see the amendment. So essentially, the amendment strikes the 14 days, but makes reference to what's current in statute. So currently under RSA 644:8, Roman numeral 4, A3, it states animal cruelty cases are given priority on the court calendar. So I don't have the figures for 2025, but just for 2024 calendar year, there were only 79 cases, a total of 124 charges. It's such a small percentage of our criminal docket that it doesn't have an effect on the other like criminal cases, just due to the nature of the small number of claims.
Can I follow?
Follow?
Thank you. Are they heard at the same kind of court? Are the animal cases heard in Superior Court?
So it depends on if it's a misdemeanor or felony. It can be heard in either, so in our circuit courts or Superior Court, depending on the offense level.
Okay, but you're confident that this will not delay the right to speedy and public trial?
Correct. Since the actual bill and the amendment doesn't change currently what's in law as it is right now, and we don't see it having an effect. It doesn't have an effect currently, so we do not anticipate this bill to have an effect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any further questions? You earned your pay today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion.
A motion is,
Motion to come out of executive.
unless you want to talk about it a little more, or you're all set? Senator Rosenwald.
That was the question that I primarily
Okay.
had. Because of shutting down court trials for a month now. I mean, I worry that everybody's constitutional rights are being tampered with a bit, but I'm relieved to hear that this doesn't make it worse.
Well, Senator, if you look on lines 17 and 18 of the amendment, I've kind of clarified that so it references the statute that's currently in.
Yes,
So we wouldn't be changing anything.
I did notice that, so I was happy
Thank
to see the 14 days go away.
Well, it's in the other part of the statute, I believe. If I remember right, it's in that RSA.
Okay,
It's listed there. So,
all right.
And with
Thank
that, a motion to move
Motion.
out of exec.
so moved.
Second by Senator Rosenwald. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Holy God. Yeah, we got a lot of people on this one, don't we? Well, let's, there's more? Where's the list? There's still is everybody signed up? All right, we can't have anybody standing in the room, by the way. So if you do not have a seat, you'll have to exit the room. And with that, we're going to hear from the prime sponsor, and we're going to limit, we don't have super we're going to limit the, thank you. We're going to limit the speeches to 3 minutes because of the amount of people that are here to sign up. So with that, prime sponsor, Representative John McDonald. You are recognized and you have the floor. You are not limited, though, to 3 minutes. So if you want 3.5, that's fine.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John T. McDonald, and I represent the fine folks of Wolfboro and Tuftonboro, New Hampshire. A little bit about this bill. The intent of this bill is to establish a committee to study neonicotinoids seed treatments. House Bill 1086 takes a careful and practical approach. It moves New Hampshire forward without rushing and without creating unnecessary delay. Other states, including New York, Vermont, have established a timeline for action in 2029. New Hampshire now has the opportunity to align with that timeline and return next year with legislative specific to our state. We're not starting from scratch. Research from Quebec, Cornell, and Penn State, including work by Dr. Tucker, has consistently shown that neonicotinoid seed treatments are often not necessary to prevent yields in corn and soy. In many cases, there is no measurable yield to the benefit. The body of evidence is substantial. The purpose of this study is to not recreate work over multiple years. It is to review and consolidate existing science, document what is already happening in New Hampshire, look at outcomes in places like fish and game lands, and ensure appropriate seed options are available. One way to keep this study efficient would be to ensure it is completed within 1 year. It relies primarily on existing peer-reviewed research and available New Hampshire data, without requiring multi-year field tests. Farmers deserve a clear, independent information grounded in evidence and applicable to the state of New Hampshire. If our findings align with what has already been demonstrated in Quebec and across the Northeast, New Hampshire can then move forward confidentially with reinventing the wheel. The study should be targeted, efficient, and time-bound, so the legislation can return next year with informed, balanced legislation. HB 1086 is the right step to do that. I respectfully ask for your support and the committee recommendation of ought to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Questions from the committee? Not all at once.
Yes. Thanks for bringing this bill forward, and it does make a lot of sense to me. I just was, you believe that the committee, once constituted, will be able to look to the experience with these kinds of bans beyond Quebec, Vermont, New York, which are mentioned there, because I know, of course, the European Union and other places. So you don't think that there's any limitation on what you might look at just because those are the ones that are mentioned?
Thank you for the question, Senator. No, I don't believe so. I hope that they look to other, either positive or negative feedback from wherever.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator Pro?
Good morning, thanks for coming in. Isn't it possible for a committee to already look at all this information without going through the formal process of having a study committee and all the costs associated with it?
Thank you for the question, Senator. That's an interesting question. You're going to have this bill and another bill coming up a little bit earlier that if I can just take a minute to explain that I brought forward. And I went to the pesticide board and tried to work with them on a basis to make the bill the best it possibly could be. And we did have a subcommittee, and we did take input, and you'll hear about it more in the next bill. But I think it's important that we as legislatures give our opinion and hear all the facts, because I'm sure that will have to come before the legislature as a bill, whatever the outcome is, whether it's negative or positive.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bixby? Remind you are limited to 3 minutes.
Okay, so
Yeah, good.
for the record, Representative Peter Bixby, Dover, New Hampshire, Stratford 13, and I am the ranking member of House A&E. And just a quick thing about what's at stake here. one of the things that is really critical in terms of agriculture and in terms of aquatic health is the is soil health and the system of organisms that you find in soil, from bacteria and other very small microorganisms to fungi to arthropods such as insects and small worms, etc., and plant roots. And what's critical for good plant growth, good healthy plant growth, is having that system working effectively. And similarly, in a pond or a river or a lake, having a system of microorganisms such as bacteria and zooplankton, which eat the bacteria, and then other, small fish which eat the zooplankton, all the way up to your bass and whatever, and then the plants that also are involved in that whole system. What happens with neonics is that they are a broad spectrum pesticide that really kills just about all arthropods indiscriminately. And what happens when you put them into a soil ecosystem is that they disrupt that ecosystem, so that the patterns that usually keep things healthy, so you have predator insects that eat your pests. If you get rid of those predator insects, you have more of the pests. And in water, zooplankton eat the bacteria, including cyanobacteria. If you lose the zooplankton, which are strongly affected by neonics, then you have a much larger number of cyanobacteria blooms, which we have heard a lot about. So that is why it is critical that we do something about neonics. And the reason that we, as a committee, chose not to ban them immediately was because we had some questions about some of the ways that that a ban would affect farmers and affect basically our agricultural economy. And so one of the things that we heard strongly from testimony was okay. We heard strongly that all right. So if you want to ask me questions about why we need a study committee, I'd be welcome to take them.
Are there any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Representative. I just have to be fair to everybody.
Right. I just and think about things like.
Do you have written testimony?
I do not have written testimony.
Maybe you could send us something that we could.
Okay, I will add some written testimony.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Representative, and I hate to be fly in the ointment. Are there any other representatives here? There was.
I'm gonna spray you.
You caught it. That's good. All right, Commissioner. Nothing? Okay, I see you sitting there.
Thank you, though.
Yeah. Kind of guy.
Monitoring this one.
All right. So let's, Mary Rose.
Good morning, Chair Efford, Vice Chair Pearl, and members of the committee. My name is Mary Rose Gozafava, and I am a senior fellow and attorney with the Conservation Law Foundation, an organization that oversees the Legal Food Hub, which is a service that connects New Hampshire farmers to free legal assistance. I am also have been a president of an organic farm for 4 years, where we successfully grow a variety of crops without neonicotinoids, including corn. And I am here today to testify in support of HB 1086, which is an act, as you've heard, to create a committee to study neonicotinoid seed treatments. Today, you will hear from several experts about the devastating effects of neonicotinoid pesticides on our environment. I would like to talk and address the use of neonicotinoids in agriculture. Neonicotinoid-coated corn, wheat, and soy seeds are widely used in agriculture, and they represent a significant source of that pesticide in our environment. For example, up to 90% of the neonicotinoids that are applied to our seeds are not absorbed by the plant at all. Instead, it leaches into the soil, into the water, and the air. Despite such use, landmark studies from Cornell University, Quebec, and Ontario confirmed there is no economic benefit to neonicotinoid seed treatments in our corn or soybean production. This means that New Hampshire farmers are using a product that not only doesn't help them, but also damages the systems that their farms depend on. Informed in part by these studies, Quebec, New York, and Vermont have all passed regulations prohibiting the sale and use of neonicotinoid-treated corn, soy, and wheat seeds. Since Quebec instituted its ban in 2019, Quebec farmers have had ready access to non-neonicotinoid-coated seeds. Seed prices are lower than their coated counterparts, and their crop yields are steady. In summary, studies have decisively demonstrated that neonicotinoid seed treatments do not help farmers to control pests or increase yields, and that farmers have successfully adapted to non-coated seeds in neighboring regions. Furthermore, there's enough evidence, as you will see, of environmental harm to New Hampshire so that New Hampshire should take steps to responsibly regulate neonicotinoid-treated seeds. HB 1086 is an important first step. This bill would create a committee to examine the relevant information that is out there and available from scientific and respected sources, develop the right neonicotinoid policy for New Hampshire. For example, the study committee could help New Hampshire determine how to capitalize on work already done in New York to create an efficient, low-cost waiver process. I consequently ask the committee to support this bill. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any
Thank you.
questions.
Could we have a copy of that for the committee?
I only have one marked up,
That's
very
all.
marked up version.
That's all right. We can make copies.
Okay,
Thank you. Are there
Sure.
questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
testimony. Rosemary Malfi?
Hello,
Welcome.
thank you. Good afternoon, or good morning, everyone. My name is Rosemary Malfi. I am the policy director at the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. I'm also an ecologist. This is an issue that we have studied for a very long time. It's not new, the issue of neonicotinoid-treated seeds and their impacts on the environment. So I'm here to say that the Xerces Society is a very strong supporter of 1086. We were a strong supporter of it in its original form, and we also support it as a study bill. I think what the legislative committee will end up finding is that there is a substantial body of evidence showing that there are major harms from neonicotinoids, including as applications as treated seeds, and that there's very little economic benefit that we get for that risk. We talk a lot about pollinators. Pollinators are harmed by neonics. There's substantial evidence to back this up. That's bees, but also butterflies, and they are harmed at very small quantities. So I know it sounds like maybe there's not a lot of neonic on a particular seed, but when you apply that to the soil year after year, it can accumulate, and then it goes, again, 90% of the seed coating doesn't stay on the seed. It moves. So it goes into the soil, it goes into the waterways, which means other plants that bees do visit are going to take that up and potentially be poisoned. Waterways are also something that we should talk about. And I actually really appreciate Representative Bixby bringing it up. If you like fish and if you like birds, they need these aquatic insects to survive. That's their food. So caddisflies, stoneflies, mayflies, those are all very sensitive to neonicotinoids. And because they're water soluble, they just end up in the water and they are exposed. We don't have great water quality sampling from New Hampshire that I'm aware of. But in Connecticut, which is not too far away, there is a report that I can send to you that looked at water quality over the last 20 years. And it finds that neonic detections have gone way up over that time. Not only that, the majority of those samples are above what we call the aquatic life benchmark set by the EPA, which means that the dose that's in the water is harmful to those organisms when they are exposed over time, right? They're just sort of bathing in a particular dose. And that's a problem. That's not good. We know from studies, not from all of the rivers, but from some, like Norwalk River, mayflies have gone down over that period of time by 75% in abundance, 66% decline in the species richness in the Norwalk River for mayflies. And again, we need those. If you like to fish, if you like to bird watch, which I don't know if we can do a show of hands in the background of people who like to fish or bird watch, then we should really be concerned about this issue. It's also an economic one. Bird watching, and I said I have a handout that I provided to the committee. It's an economic issue too. Hundreds of millions of dollars are spent in New Hampshire on things like wildlife watching, bird watching, and recreational fishing. So yeah, that is why this issue is so important, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. All right, John, you didn't check whether you wanted to speak on the bill. John Moulton, did you want to speak?
No, thank you.
All right, but you are in opposition to it.
Yes, I am.
All right. Carol Foss.
Morning, Chair Ehrvard and members of the committee. My name is Carol Foss. I am Senior Advisor for Science and Policy at New Hampshire Audubon. We are in support of this bill. There are many issues with neonic. I'm going to be brief and not repeat what others have said. We believe that the experience of nearby jurisdictions, including the states mentioned and Canada, give New Hampshire a real opportunity to learn from others who have some experience with this before enacting a ban ourselves. We're concerned that our agricultural community is being asked to pay for a product on seeds that isn't necessarily helping productivity, but is having serious consequences both to soil ecology and to water ecology. And neonics are beginning to get into the human food chain as well, with potential human health risks, which are not well studied on this continent yet. So with that, I do have written testimony, and thank you for your attention.
Questions from the committee? Everybody's doing a great job. All right. Thank you, Carol. Kurt is in support of the bill, but not wishing to speak from the Humane World. Kyle, your Lacasse is against it, but doesn't say whether you want to speak or not. All right. In the future, if you write yes or no, that helps. Thank you. Chuck Souther? Chuck Souther. In opposition and wishing to speak. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chuck Souther. My wife Diane and I own Apple Hill Farm here in Concord. It's a diverse tree fruit, small fruit, vegetable farm. I'm here, first of all, in opposition to the bill, basically because we heard that this was going to be a very efficient study done. And it seems to me like a really efficient way to do a study is to have a certain number of people and only look at research that's already been done somewhere else. And what I would suggest is that we do need to look at this, but we need to look at it under New Hampshire conditions. Corn is king, there's no doubt about it, but we're seeing an increase of small grains in the state. And it's going to be an important part of keeping our dairy farmers alive by diversifying their crop base. But if we're going to do a study of this, and we have these people available at the University of New Hampshire, we have agronomists that can look at the crops, what's happening with them, in economic studies of the crops, how they're doing. We have a soil scientist at UNH that would love to look into this thing, the effects of this on soil. We have entomologists at UNH that would look at this. And I would also suggest that the study committee needs to include the Pesticide Control Board and the Division of Regulatory Services at the Department of Agriculture. They're the ones that regulate what is on seed labels and regulate the sale of seed. So that's basically what I'm against here, is just that this bill forming this study committee is, seems like a wrong way to form a study committee. So I'd take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Senator Rosenbaum.
Thank you. Thanks for coming here. I'm guessing that you've been in touch with the UNH agronomists. And I'm just wondering, because we cut their budget pretty severely this cycle, do they think they have the capacity to do the work that you have suggested they're qualified for?
Yes, I'm very aware that budgets have been cut at UNH. But if you have not had an opportunity to talk with Dean Davis at COLSA, College of Life Sciences Agriculture, and the people that work under him with Extension and the Ag Experiment Station, they are more excited and want to do work that helps New Hampshire farmers.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions. Thank you very much, Chuck.
Thanks.
Robert Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rob Johnson, representing New Hampshire Farm Bureau as a Federation's policy director, and we oppose the bill. It predetermines a ban only by looking at where there have been bans or planned bans instituted in Vermont, New York, and in Quebec. It doesn't look at where bans have been rejected through legislation in Maine, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. The study contains no New Hampshire farmers, no New Hampshire crop experts, doesn't look at local conditions. Neonicotinoids are a valuable tool, despite what has been said, for our farmers. And it's a key part of integrated pest management strategies, where an IPM, the goal is your last option is a chemical solution. And it in some regards prevents that at a high level. Neonicotinoids have a low mammalian toxicity, which is important to say, and they provide a preventive benefit for our farmers in our New Hampshire short growing season. And they also provide a valuable benefit where it comes to building soil health through cover crops and no-till measures. And because of the complexity of all pesticides, it is our position, and you've heard me say this before with the rodenticides bill, I'm going to say it on the next bill, that this type of activity should be going through our pesticide control board, which is equipped to understand the issue and the whole big picture of it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Senator Waters with a question. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And Rob, legislators like to get together and talk, as you know. And were this bill to include a Section 5 or a Duty 5, which would be to review the legislative record of states that have rejected bans, would that address your concern?
It still doesn't include talking to New Hampshire farmers and New Hampshire crop experts to get our local. And again, sorry, Senator, I just wanted to say again, I think this is something that the Pesticide Control Board is doing to an extent, looking at other bills. And I will provide you in the next bill with a letter we have provided with the board position.
As I question the bill's sponsor, it is the understanding that specifying these things does not preclude this group from talking with anybody who wants to talk with them. Isn't that the case?
It doesn't, but it certainly provides direction. And I gotta say, I think this is probably the first time in my career representing Farm Bureau that I have come to a legislative committee, whether the House or Senate, and oppose a study bill. Because of, usually it's a study, but again, this is predetermined and it has ramifications for our growers that this is an important tool that they do not want to lose. I mean, this is looking at a ban. And there are other measures that could be taken, and I'll speak to that a little bit on the next bill, just to save time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pearl?
I think he's done.
So you're saying that the study could be skewed in a negative way for our New Hampshire needs?
Correct.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much. Andrea Lamoureux. Did I say that right? Yeah. Lamoureux. Lamoureux. Good Irish name. Just kidding.
Good morning. I'm Andrea Lamoureux, President and Policy Advocate of New Hampshire Lakes. It's nice to see you all again. We are here in support of this bill and the next bill, primarily because we are concerned about the connection with neonicotinoids and favoring cyanobacteria blooms in our lakes. And I know you all are very familiar with cyanobacteria and the concerns that we have. And Representative Bixby did a wonderful job explaining how that happens. And I've sent some testimony and an explanation to you prior to this hearing. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that connection.
Well, thank you for your testimony. You've heard the concerns with the Farm Bureau and how this is a very narrowly structured study, which doesn't have any opposition to its goal, correct? Do you have any comments on that?
That is really not, we weren't specifically looking at, we are supportive of any type of additional study because there's certainly growing concerns. I would leave it to others in the room exactly how that study should be done and conducted. I don't claim to be an expert in that aspect of this bill.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Melody Lynn. Welcome. Oh, you gotta hit your button. None of it counts until you hit that button. Hit your button. Nope.
Oh, okay. Thank you
It's
so
all
much.
about the base. No trouble.
So I hope you can start the 3 minutes over for me then.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm a resident of Arlington Pond in Salem, New Hampshire. We are one of the many New Hampshire lakes that has experienced a huge spike in cyanobacteria outbreaks. It has really opened our eyes to the problem of contaminants in our waterways. So what worries us about the neonicotinoids is how water soluble they are and how they have been found in wells and waterways across the nation. We are concerned about that statistic somebody else cited about how only 5% of the active ingredient of the neonicotinoid seeds is actually taken up by plants. The other 95% of it ends up in the soil, ultimately ends up traveling into our waters. Second major issue with the neonicotinoids is how, well, we've realized as lake residents just how much of the contamination of our lakes is outside the control of the lake resident. Often it comes from upstream sources, it comes from the greater watershed. Basically, it comes from outside what we can control. That is where we need to rely and lean on regulatory guardrails to be careful and start to limit the widespread use of such persistent chemicals. Third, as we've studied, just, the sources of cyanobacteria due to chemical contaminants and how that affects the whole ecosystem, it's also just made us realize just how much our kids are swimming in lakes filled with, these pesticides. So the fact that neonicotinoids are so widespread, the fact that they are toxic to the very invertebrates that keep our cyanobacteria under control, the fact that we have learned not to be fooled by the idea that small amounts of things don't matter. Everything that we are measuring in our lake is measured in parts per billion. When we have a cyanobacteria outbreak, it's measured in parts per billion. When we look at the effects of chemicals on the cyanobacteria, those chemicals are measured in parts per billion. Amazingly, small amounts of things can have big consequences. That's why we are in support of the committee. We are also in support of the other bill to be discussed about limiting the use and making sure people have permits to use them, because we care so much about our waterways. Our eyes have been opened to the dangers of cyanobacteria, to the dangers of chemicals in our water, and we ask you to please support these bills. Please support them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you.
Okay.
Nisa Marks. Did I say that right?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Nisa Marks. I come before you in two capacities. First, I own and operate Sweetview Farm, a small market garden in Henniker. And second, my professional background is as a wildlife biologist with some familiarity of ecosystem impacts of neonicotinoids. I know the legislature doesn't love doing the whole study committee thing, but I actually think it's a pretty good compromise in this case. The science is quite clear and well established on this, both in terms of ecological impacts and in terms of the benefits, and I would argue net negatives for agricultural operations and cash crops. What's changing is the market in response to the bans that have been passed by neighboring states and other jurisdictions, including Quebec, Maine, Vermont, New York, and New Jersey. So having a study committee that's targeted at understanding this sort of dynamic regional market and what it's meaning for seed availability and for sort of on-the-ground practicalities in order to come up with the right regulatory approach to what is a well-established problem here in New Hampshire seems like a reasonable compromise in my view. From an agricultural perspective, there's a growing body of science, including from the USDA, that shows either no measurable impact or inconsistent impact to many crop yields when crops are sprayed or when treated seeds are planted. This is harming pollinators. Without pollinators, we don't have zucchini, pumpkins, blueberries, apples, watermelon, cantaloupe. The list is long. When pollinator populations crash, as they are with neonic use, the alternative is hand pollination, which is extremely labor intensive and therefore expensive. This is not a hypothetical. There are already farms in the US that are forced to hand pollinate because the pollinators have died off, and that causal link has been established. This is affecting apple, cherry, and blueberry crops, important crops economically here in New Hampshire. And as you know, profit margins in farming are tiny, so anything that is impacting those, like having to compensate for fewer pollinators, can easily put a farm out of business. Neonics aren't only killing the pollinators either. This isn't just about the ecology. It's also harming beneficial insects that are the natural predators of crop pests like aphids. And yes, there are already multiple species of aphids and thrips that have developed enough resistance to neonics that the current set of pesticides are measurably less effective against them. So we're harming nature's control mechanisms while the pesticides are becoming less effective. Mortality rates are astronomical here. So a single corn seed treated with neonic can kill over 80,000 bees and have sublethal effects on more. A single seed is enough to kill a songbird that eats it. 1/10 of a coated seed per day during the egg laying season is enough to impair a songbird's reproduction. So you can see how these pesticides can rapidly lead to population level impacts. So this is just really an inefficient pesticide. There are some studies that say that less than 0.5% of the neonics end up in the crops themselves, and the rest is ending up in our environment. And we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of impairing pollinators and beneficial insects and crop yields, and in the meantime, not having the effect of increasing crop yields. So lots of negatives, few positives. So thank you for putting up with my passion here. I'm happy to take questions
Thank you
if
for your
there are any.
passion. Senator Waters to ask the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here today. So would you favor us adding to the duties of the Commission to talk to New Hampshire farmers?
I never oppose stakeholder engagement.
Okay, and secondly, I appreciate your conversation about the pollinators. I know we'll get that in the next bill, but we've had the Department of Fish and Game has confirmed that there's a 30 to 70% loss of the number of the overall number of birds across species.
Yeah.
And is that something you, as in terms of your observation, have noticed the dramatic decrease in number of birds around?
Yeah, absolutely. Every spring that gets a little quieter, it's actually really sad to hear. And some of these species that have been documented to be in decline are birds that are eating crop pests like cabbage moths and so forth. So it is something that is likely affecting our farms.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that decline related to habitat, but also, I mean, there are 30 to 70% fewer birds in New Hampshire. So thank you.
Senator Waters.
And the science is there to link that to neonics.
Well, thanks for coming in today. So you operate a produce farm, is that true?
Correct, mixed vegetables.
Sure. So I'm assuming you don't use neonicotinoid products on your farm.
Correct.
What could you just enlighten the committee a little bit on what type of pest control practices you use to keep the pests out of the types of crops that you grow?
Sure. So I am a fan of organic methods. I do a lot of hand pest control. Observation goes a long way. You catch these problems early, and they're much easier to deal with. Before all the eggs hatch and you've got a robust pest population on the farm. There are some organic sprays that are available for some of our common pests. There are also, Cornell has some research that compares neonics to some of the other already commercially available pesticides on, some of the big crops like snap beans or seed corn. And there are at least 5 alternative seed treatments that have proven as effective as standard neonics for these commodity crops in terms of crop yield.
Oh,
Are you aware of any of the concerns with perhaps some of the organic pesticides, any issues that they would have with some of the songbirds and butterflies and the pollinators that you talked about?
I mean, any intervention that we make has an effect, but it is well documented that neonics are among the more toxic ecologically in terms of the pesticides that are on the market. These are quite inefficient in terms of protecting our crops and are really disproportionately devastating to not just insects, but also all the wildlife that depends on insects, frogs, birds, bats, turtles, the list is long, fish.
One more? Sure. Would you agree that the use of the neonics in many cases has cut down a significant use of the pyrethroids that generally are what farmers would use, for application on like a foliar application?
I don't know New Hampshire specific data in terms of that, and I would suggest that that might be something that the study committee could look at here.
Thank you.
further questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Sarah Rookledge?
Good morning. My name is Sarah Rockledge. I am from TC Farm in Durham, New Hampshire. I am a fourth generation farmer, and I also got my master's in microbiology at UNH. So I had this whole speech prepared, but I'm going to say that I agree with Chuck that we need the committee to talk to UNH. My farm is actually right next to UNH. And, you know, they have been great in helping us solve problems, getting data from, and we need to talk to the experts, and that includes the Pesticide Control Board. We grow 50 acres of sweet corn, and a lot of the varieties that we use don't have the option of getting untreated seed. They come pre-treated. Seed corn maggot is a problem in New Hampshire. Not every field has it, and it's unfortunate that, you know, some of the varieties we ordered do come treated because it varies from field to field. In the fields that do have seed corn maggot, we can get a staggering crop loss. And because the growing season in New Hampshire is so short, we can't go back and plant. We plant May 1st, and our first harvest is the end of July. If we don't get that field, that's economic loss. We're not getting that back. We have a 3-month period where our farm stand is open, and that's the end of our season. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth in New Hampshire. And like I said, I plant varieties on one side of the road, and on the other side of the road gets other varieties, because that's how much difference there is just in my area, which is why I think looking at, you know, Quebec, New York, New Jersey isn't going to equate to New Hampshire, because I have variability on 100 acres, never mind on other states. And, you know, from personal experience, I know that we not only have neonicotinoid seed treatments, but we occasionally do use sprays when needed. They're a tool in our toolbox, and I will speak to this a little later, but I do want to say that we have one of the better birds watching spots. We're next to the Moore Field. It's called the TC Field, Moore Field, and we have a ton of bird watching spots. We have an amazing presence of monarch butterflies in our fields. And I think that is because we use a variety of methods. Neonicotinoids are just one of the tools. They're not what we go to all the time. They're not the end all be all, but again, rather just a single tool. And if you take that away, we'll have to go to something else, and then we won't be able to mix and match a lot of our things.
So how do you water?
Variety of methods. In our greenhouse, we just use a hose. In the fields, we use drip lines, so we conserve water under black plastic. And our corn is on its own. It has to be super strong.
Where do you get your water from?
We have water rights to our river.
As you test the water, do you find any of the mixed substances in it at all? I mean, what do you find in your water supply?
So I'm not gonna lie to you, we don't test for neonics. We do basic, you know, water analysis with salts, you know, fecal matter, pH, stuff like that. That's not in any of the basic tests that we do.
Okay. Question, Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate hearing that even within your own farm, different parcels have different soil conditions. But I'm wondering, wouldn't that be true in Vermont and New York and Quebec as well?
Oh,
that a particular farm might experience the same differentiation from one side of the road to the other as
absolutely.
you do.
Oh, absolutely. What I'm trying to point out is that their insects, all of their, you know, weed pressures, it's not going to be the same as New Hampshire. They'll have different insects because they're farther north or farther west, or the jet stream's different, which provides different insect pressures, which is I can get into that later, but it's how we set our spray schedule, because if the jet stream is coming from the south, it means we have to spray more. If the jet stream's coming from the west, we don't have to spray. So we can tailor our spray system to the different weather conditions so we can know actually when to spray more and when to spray less.
Thank you.
Is this an unusual year?
Pardon?
Is this an unusual year for the jet stream?
Every year is unusual.
Thank you. Further questions? Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rep. Gruber, you didn't want to speak, but you're in support. Cynthia Walters? Or Walter? Do I have all my sheets? Yeah.
Yes, I'm Cynthia Walter, and I'm speaking today as a retired biologist. There you go. Sorry about that. Cynthia Walter, speaking today as a retired biologist, a citizen. I'm also a former co-founder of a group called Citizens for Responsible Pest Management. It's now no longer active, but I very much appreciated listening to the farmers. I taught for 35 years in a rural area. And so many of my students and I studied farms and the difficulties that farmers have to make ends meet. So I'm appreciative of that. And I want to say that the one thing about this study that's being proposed in this bill that would help the farmers is that, first of all, it gives the farmers a chance to participate in the whole process of understanding seed coatings and regulations that might come forward because of that. I think it's unfortunate perhaps the bill didn't specify the engagement with farmers, and it would be helpful perhaps if the bill could be amended to emphasize that and provides clear mechanisms for farmers to provide that input like we just heard today. Speaking of farmers, though, it's really important to understand how those seed varieties could be made available with and without neonic coatings. For example, we just heard how they can't buy seeds of the varieties that they want because they're without neonics, because those seeds already have that coating on them, even though the purchaser in New Hampshire doesn't want that. Well, by having the study committee, we will actually be able to talk to the manufacturers of the seeds who are preparing for the huge market of New York and its seed production, and see how those varieties that are aimed at New York could also be added to the seed varieties aimed at New Hampshire, and then meet New York's requirements as well as New Hampshire's requirements to reduce neonics on seeds. You said, I mean, we've got to get everybody together because we are in a region of marketing for seed coats and for varieties, many different varieties, but we've got to get to the manufacturers in this conversation. So another thing that would help is this project gives us a chance for IPM. I am old enough to remember painfully the process of pest control, the chaos of pest control without IPM before it was common, and the unwanted expenses, the unnecessary exposures, and the uncertainty of outcomes. So we have a chance with this study committee to engage UNH in monitoring our farms here in New Hampshire with and without neonic seed and other comparisons. So this doesn't have to take multiple years. We have in hand farms that have not had neonic use for long periods of time and use similar crops and farms that don't in a nearby location. So we have the with and without right together in New Hampshire in different places. UNH is very smart and very capable to do that kind of study. So you can add that to the bill, or you can just say this is understood that UNH and the Pesticide Control Board would be involved in this study, I would hope.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
I have to wrap that up. Are there questions from the committee? You can submit that to the committee if you'd like, and they'll make copies for us.
Right, I'll add that, thank you.
All right, I believe this is Fallen Gaudette or Fallon Gaudette? Fawn Gaudette. Okay, Fawn. Sorry, I'm dyslexic and I can use it all the time I want because I. Hit your mic. Yeah. Nope. There you go.
Okay, hello, my name is Fawn Gaudette. I'm a proud descendant of the Blackfeet Nation. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on HB 4, sorry, right one. I will be testifying on that one. There you go. Sorry about that. Dear Honorable Chair Avard and Vice Chair Pearl and members of the Senate and Natural Resources Committee, I am Fawn Gaudette, proud descendant of the Blackfeet Nation. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. My upbringing, like many of you, allows me to be keenly aware of the sacred circle of life. Currently, the circle of life is broken and affects our planet, ecosystem, food system, biodiversity, humanity, and all species of Mother Earth. We live in a dangerous time of change, and it's time to join together. Right now, we are in a time of the sixth mass extinction, and it's experiencing an insect apocalypse, and it sounds overwhelming, but it is the truth. You can also look these facts up, and you will find it. David Fessa shared that humans are causing 1 million species to go extinct. And because a lot of this has been shared, I want to point out that in the New York Times, the insect apocalypse is known as a worldwide loss as part of the sixth mass extinction. And one thing that's going on in New Hampshire that's really key to that is the rusty patch bumblebee is believed to be locally extinct, which is devastating. And pollinators are crucial to our survival because they support 1 in 3 bites of food we eat in every day. So alarmingly, the US government is developing drone technology to pollinate crops. This was an article written in 2017 and in David Golson's article. Now, I just want to make you aware that even in China, apple farmers, as back far as in 2012, have been pollinating crops by hands. To my knowledge, this is still happening. This is an alert to humanity and Mother Earth. In our country, the EPA has approved the use of harmful pesticides that negatively impact bees. So we know this. In Europe, many neonics are being banned. In the US, some states are taking strong actions to protect them. So hopefully we can move forward in New Hampshire, because we're the live free or die state, to protect our pollinators and to work with farmers and make the study committee to move forward in a way to help protect our pollinators so our sacred circle of life is made stronger. And the one key thing is neonics, one seed kills 80,000 bees and 1 songbird. How am I doing time-wise? So, and then there's been a loss it's been noted, up to 3 billion birds. So that's in the past and we're still moving forward. So I encourage study. I agree that there should be local studies in the state with colleges, UNH, even Dartmouth, and, work together to find, keep making the study community stronger and work together to support HB 10, this bill, 1086 FN, and let's all be supportive of one another.
Good job. Look at that. Well
Any
done.
questions?
Questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you very much. And our final speaker is David Trumbull. That's it. I'm going to be leaving very shortly. This is your area. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull from Ware. I'm also an organic farmer in my 40th year as a certified organic farmer, and my farm is called Good Earth Farm. I'll try to introduce a couple points that have been brought up. First is, how do neonics compare with other pesticides? The NDRC report indicated that since neonics were first introduced, U.S. agriculture has become 48 times more harmful to bees and insects, 92% of this load attributable to neonics alone. So we are going in the wrong direction. Neonics are making earth farming more dangerous for pesticides. In fact, it is 1,000 times more toxic to bees than DDT was. Insects are crucial. They're crucial to our life. They make up 80% of all species on the land. The birds, 90% of birds or more eat insects, and they can't make children and feed them without insects for the necessary protein. So this issue is not just how much corn yield do you get, it's looking at our entire ecosystem. We've heard about the impact on water. A study in Japan in Science magazine noted that neonics resulted in an 83% reduction in zooplankton, as representatives indicated before, reduction in fish harvest of 90%. The neonics are destroying the ecosystem, so we do need to take effort. You've heard that one kernel of corn can kill 80,000 bees. That's more than a whole hive. Just think about how many kernels are in a bushel of, or a whole truckload of corn seeds. There won't be many beehives left at the rate we're going. I wanted to go to this question about IPM as the last resort to use a spray. If it's on the seed, it's the first thing that the farmer does. There's no choice to see how the crop is going and decide what you're doing. You're right away introducing the most toxic pesticide possible before you've even started growing your crop. So that's really not working in favor of the farmers. The studies have been very clear in Quebec, which is pretty comparable to our climate. No change in yield with neonics, and when they got rid of neonics 5 years in a row, they did studies and found no reduction in crop yields. So it doesn't affect the farmers in a bad way. However, the neonics do destroy the good bugs, and the good bugs play an important part of making sure that the bad bugs are kept in check. There was a study out at Purdue that looked at melon crops, and they found that neonics actually resulted in decreased yields. So overall, I would just ask you to make sure that we study this issue over. I'm totally in support of involving UNH and also looking at the other states. That sounds like a common sense amendment to be added on to the bill. And if it can be done in 1 year, that would be great. If it takes 2 years, but we need to get a good study so that all the farmers in the state learn what happened up in Quebec. They were scared. They were told this is going to be a disaster. It turned out to be a great thing in Quebec. I think the same thing would be true in New Hampshire if we do a good job studying it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Representative, you'll be our last speaker.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Jonah Orion Wheeler, and I represent the towns of Peterborough and Sharon, and I'm a member of the House Environment and Agriculture Committee. And I wanted to come testify in support of this piece of legislation as a member of the committee, if not, I think, the only member who voted against this piece of legislation in its final form in committee. I voted against it because I supported the original version of the bill based off of the testimony that we heard here today that we'll get into in 1431 as well. This is a series of products that are 1,000 times more toxic than DDT is for the bee population. And when DDT was seen as toxic, we as a country immediately took action in dealing with the fact that that was out on the market. And I think that we should do a similar thing here. But if we're not going to do that, which the House has determined we will not do, then I think a study committee, a legislative study committee, is the right way to move forward. And in terms of any potential amendments on what we came out of committee with, I would say the legislative study committee is restricted to legislators. And so we have the ability to look at almost anything when we get together on that table. But trying to expand it out into other people makes it a commission. And as we all well know, commissions and study committees even have a hard time of passing this legislature because we can't find people to serve on those commissions. And as Senator Rosenwald, I believe, brought up earlier to a testifier who was speaking to the fact that UNH and all these other people should be a part of this study committee, they don't particularly have the capacity to do something like that, but they may have the capacity to come to attend one or two of the study committee's meetings. And so I just wanted to testify in support of keeping this as a legislative study committee as opposed to expanding it out to a commission that risks filling empty seats or risks having empty seats rather. we got to do the best job that we can here in this legislature for an issue that is, I think, urgent for protecting the symbiosis of our environment and our ability to move forward for another 50 to 100 years. And the way to do that, I think, is the most efficient legislative study committee that we can do, which is the bill before you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions from the committee? Nope. Thank you, Representative. And with that, we're going to close the hearing. And Chairman's got to go, so Vice Chair's in charge.
We're both going over to Granite Place. We're trying to get back. We got bills to introduce.
With that, we'll open up the, oh, look at that. Nice. Good for you.
Love you guys too. All right, with that, we will open the hearing on House Bill 1431. Representative McDonald, we will recognize you to introduce the bill. Thank you. Good morning again, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is still Representative John T. McDonald, and I represent the communities of Wolfboro and Tuftonboro. We've been talking about these pesticides, these neonics, for a long time, and the concern is straightforward. They impact pollinators, they impact birds, and they affect the health of our lakes, rivers, and streams. People are seeing this across New Hampshire. House Bill 1431 comes before you after years of bipartisan work. This is not a new issue. It's not even close to being a new issue. The effort has crossed the aisle from the beginning. It's not political. It's about a natural world here in New Hampshire that we all value. New Hampshire has been looking at this problem for nearly a decade, with limited movement towards implementation. My friend, Ms. Tanya Albee, will walk you through the full chronology of the events for the past 10 years. After filing these bills, which are also 1086, I met with Commissioner Jasper and members of the Pesticide Control Board. The goal was simple: work with the board, not around it. At the direction of Commissioner Jasper, a subcommittee was formed. It included state agencies, scientific expertise, and public interest voices. The members included Mr. Kyle Lombard, New Hampshire Department of Natural and Cultural Resources; Pierre Sargent, New Hampshire State Entomologist; Cheryl A. Smith, PhD, who represented the public interest; and also present during the committee meetings was Director David Russo. We met multiple times. There was good discussion, thoughtful discussion. And importantly, the conversation was not whether these pesticides are a concern, it was how to approach regulating them. After those meetings, I did not hear that there was any rulemaking underway, scheduled, or about to begin concerning this important topic. From the work, rules are developed, and these rules are reflected with what you have before you. And if I could just ask the committee to look at the original bill. If you look all the way down, everything that's on here came up through the subcommittee. The Agriculture Committee did make some changes. When it looked under the 43060, all the ones that we had there, A, B, C, all the way through were shall. That's been changed to may, and that was done by the Ag Committee. But everything you see before you on this amended bill was covered during the subcommittee, input from the subcommittee of the Pesticide Board. This is a measured step built on years of review and collaboration. There is also precedent here. In 2015, a New Hampshire state agency, New Hampshire Fish and Game, restricted the use of neonics pesticides on lands it manages. I learned from speaking with Chief Daniel Bergeron of the Wildlife Division of our Fish and Game that around 2016, use of neonics on agricultural property owned and leased by New Hampshire Fish and Game would be prohibited. This policy was established as a result of working with the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture and the UNH Cooperative Extension. Additionally, in July of 2014, the U.S. Fish and Game Wildlife Service announced plans to phase out the use of neonics pesticides throughout the National Wildlife Refuge System due to the widespread concerns about non-target impacts. This ban went into full effect on all those properties in January of 2016. This is an unfamiliar ground. What this bill does is very focused. It restricts use on turf, and it ensures these products are only used by hired, trained applicators. That's it. And more importantly, this bill provides clarity, whether action is optional or whether it is required. One thing I would say about may leaves inaction as an option. Shall makes the action expectation. It does not expand government, it does not create fiscal impact, and it keeps authority within the Pesticide Control Board. This is an issue where we continue to hear from constituents across our communities that there is strong interest in seeing progress made in this topic. The question before you is simple: whether this continues to be studied or whether it is moved to implementation. This bill provides a clear, measured path forward within the structure that already exists. I respectfully ask for your support in moving this bill forward with an ought to pass recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have questions? Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. It's my understanding that in 2022, the EPA stated that these chemicals were responsible for harming over 1,000 endangered species and destroying over 800 kinds of habitat. Am I correct?
I would say that would be a reasonable assumption based on the U.S. wildlife banning their use at the refuges for all those different animals. It's also interesting to note that if you look in the 1086 package, you'll see that there was a study done by the New Hampshire Agriculture Committee, which Chairman Pearl was the vice chairman, that came out of, I believe it was Dartmouth, where they provided a lot of information. I guess my main concern is we have to do something. I'm not trying to take away any powers of the pesticide board, control board, but nobody's doing anything. And I don't know, I can't figure out why.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We got the same situation as we had on the last bill. We have a lot of folks that want to talk. So, excuse me, I'm going to institute the same policy that the chair did on the previous bill, that we'll keep it to 3 minutes because we've got 4 hearings to do today and we got to get kicked out of here at noon. So we'll try and give everybody a chance to speak, and let's see if we can move it along. Representative Bixby.
I thought Rep. Aaron had signed up because she was the author of the amendment, but I can speak to some of what we did. For the record, Representative Peter Bixby, Stratford 13, Dover, and ranking member of Environment and Agriculture. So, unlike seed treatment, which is not regulated by the EPA or the Board of Pesticide Control, systemic and sprayed neonics are regulated by the EPA and the BPC. And they are currently general use in New Hampshire, which means that anybody can use can buy them at any outlet that sells them and use them. And one of the things that is clear from our discussion already is that these can be environmentally harmful. So it's really important to make sure that we have people who know how to use them, using them, and make sure that we have that level of control that only people who are licensed pesticide appliers can use them. And restricted use does this. And so this bill, as Representative McDonald pointed out, reflects a discussion with the Board of Pesticide Control, and it makes it this bill makes the issues brought up in that discussion explicit. So the things that we would like the Board of Pesticide Control to consider, it does not make them required. It still gives the Board of Pesticide the latitude to make the judgments that they need to make in order to do the correct level of restriction on things. And so two things that it does, the only two shalls in this bill are that they shall produce the rules by a deadline, and they shall make sure that there's a way to notify apiaries that when neonics are being sprayed near their property. But everything else is really under the control of the Pesticide Control Board. And one thing I'd like to point out is that I recognize that, and the committee recognizes that neonics do play an important role in agriculture in New Hampshire. One example is with apple orchards, where using systemics after bloom is a way of controlling plum curculio and a number of other post-bloom pests. And the previous mechanism for doing that was using organophosphates, which had a much stronger toxicity particularly to mammals. And by using a systemic neonic, we're able to avoid that. Another thing that has,
Wrap up quickly.
Okay, so I just wanted to point out that the way that restricted use has helped is that it used to be that they would apply it to the roots. They recognized that that could affect neighboring plants. Now they apply it to the trunk. So that's because it's restricted use, they're able to do that sort of development in appropriate management.
Thank you, Representative. Anything further you want the committee to know, please feel free to say.
And I'd be happy to take questions.
Any questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Representative Wheeler, do you want to testify? Yes, sir. All right, come on up.
Thank you, Chairman Pearl and members of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Jonah O'Ryan Wheeler, and I represent the towns of Peterborough and Sharon, and I am here in full support of House Bill 1431. I think Representative McDonald has done a really good job with the stakeholders in his community and constituents across this state who care about this issue a lot, who are farmers and bird watchers and people who enjoy nature and just citizens of this state who'd like to see the environment of it be there for their children and their children's children. And, you know, as one of the children under this golden dome, I too would like the people who come after me to be able to enjoy this beautiful environment. But the more that we as a society find ourselves away from, as I said in the last hearing, symbiosis with the environment in which we live, the natural harmony that exists in this planet, then the more we will find ourselves with problems like pest infestations and the destroying forests that we're seeing, you know, greater blight and all these other things that we're seeing as a result of you know, in some ways, modern society. And, you know, I'm not a Luddite. I don't believe that we should go back to the 1800s technologically. I think we have a beautiful, very advanced society that has the potential to introduce symbiosis in a way that didn't exist in the mid-20th century. And this restricted use of neonicotinoids, which are proven toxic substance for the insects and other small I always forget the word that Representative Bixby used, the arthropods or something like that. My first year on this committee. Okay, so, but the small bugs and others. That's right. I know it's true. You know, all these big words and everything like that. But these small bugs and insects that seemingly play an unimportant role. They might be annoying to us when they land. You know, oh, mayfly or something like that. But to the economy of the ecosystem, they're a critical piece. Without them, the whole thing falls apart. You know, it's funny to think about a house that big, which is the food chain, being held up by something as small as an insect. But that is what is going on here in our world, and I think we should do everything we can to protect those insects and to reintroduce symbiosis in this world, organic farming, restricted use of neonicotinoids and other pesticides which are destroying our environment, I think is the right way to move forward. And so I was not happy with the amendment as it came out. I wanted a full ban move forward, and I testified to that in the committee. But we've got a bipartisan, I think, really good piece of product that has come out of the House here that deals with a really urgent issue that our constituents are begging us to tackle. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Any other reps that want to testify on this? I looked through the list. She's not testifying. Okay. Okay, Rosemary Melfi Versace. I don't think I did as good as Senator Avard did on your name. Sorry.
Good, is it on? Okay, great. Thank you again for holding this hearing today and hearing this bill in particular, as well as the last one. Again, I'm Rosemary Malfi. I'm the policy director with the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. I just want to first say Representative Wheeler spoke eloquently about the arthropods that we all care very much about at my organization. So thank you for that. Today, I wanted to convey our support for this bill and kind of highlight why. Pollinators and other beneficial insects are declining at alarming rates, not just globally, not just nationally, but also here in New Hampshire. Just decades ago, 16 species of bumblebees could be found here. Today, over 40% of those species are in severe decline or locally extinct. Of the more than 120 butterfly species historically found in the state, 85 are declining. Many of us have noticed this loss firsthand. It's called the windshield effect. Do you remember? If anyone who drove a car in the 90s, your early 2000s, you actually got bugs on your windshield. And I think everyone here probably knows that that doesn't happen so much anymore. Neonicotinoid insecticides, or neonics, are a major contributor to these declines. There's lots of science behind that. They are extremely toxic at very low doses. An adult honeybee can be killed by just a few nanograms, which is 15,000 times smaller than a grain of salt. Even when exposure is not lethal, trace amounts can disrupt foraging, reproduction, immune function. It basically makes them less good at being bees, right? And because of their extreme toxicity, it's the Xerces Society's position that neonics should be restricted to trained applicators only. I don't know about you, but I know lots of people who don't follow instructions. And pesticide labels are complex. And it's definitely the case that it's not that, for neonics, you can't just double it and that, maybe I'll just double it. That has a huge impact because it's so toxic at such small quantities. So we really do need people who know what they're doing and who have read the labels and understand how to apply these things to be the ones who are doing it. I'll also say that, there's a lot of precedent for putting restrictions on these. The EPA has just decided to kick the can down the road like any number of times. They have not tackled this issue, even though they have identified it as a problem. Turf grass and ornamental landscapes are a significant source of neonic use still, so the turf ban makes a lot of sense. Connecticut just recently implemented that same rule. And you would be joining a number of other states, I think at least 12, if not 13 now, that have implemented a similar type of restriction. So many people are starting to recognize that the federal government has not done their job when it comes to this class of pesticides, and states are taking the matter into their own hands. And I hope you will too.
Thank you for your testimony. I think there's many of us in the room that it's been beat into us that the label is the law. I think
Yes.
George Hamilton did a good job of that for many, many years with extensions. So thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's it.
What?
The questions are getting less because there's only two of us.
Oh.
Tanya Elby. Yeah, it's tough this time of year, especially with all the other bills that are being presented over at the other building, because we're kind of split our time. So
Yeah.
we'll do our best. And just for the benefit of everyone, these are all available, the testimonies are, so that the members who aren't here can go back and watch.
Thank you for clarifying that. I'm new to this, so I actually didn't know that. And I was
Yes.
wondering what happens when, we come up here and then there's not a full committee.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Senators. My name is Tanya Albee. I'm from Wolfboro, and I'd like to briefly walk through the timeline of this issue so you can see how we got here today. After years of study and discussion, the question before you is whether this work now moves forward.
In your packet, we provided a detailed chronology along with a medical testimony. The doctors could not be here, but there are significant health risks to this chemical as well. But what I want to do is highlight the key points as far as the chronologies involved. And what's important to remember is that this is not new policy. The concerns around neonics in New Hampshire have began years ago. In 2015, the Fish and Game restricted the neonics on their lands. And then in 2017, they implemented a full ban. In 2019, the House of Representatives heard legislation which led to a study. That study, if I can sound like a frog here, that study came out in 2021. It was the Dartmouth study, and it's in your 1086 package today. And it identified the environmental risks to aquatic life, children, pollinators, and it recommended, legislative action being a likely course. Then 2020 through 2025, our neighboring states of Maine, Vermont, New York, Connecticut, and Quebec move forward with restrictions, but New Hampshire has not. This reflects nearly a decade of scientific evidence without any corresponding rulemaking. So in 2025, Representative McDonald requested to be part of the agenda for the Pesticide Control Board, and I was in attendance during those meetings. I attended every meeting, and Commissioner Jasper convened a subcommittee. Across those meetings, the discussion was not whether this pesticide posed a concern, it was how to regulate it. The rules and exemptions in 1431 before you were developed through that process. So they weren't without the Pesticide Control Board, they were the result of the Pesticide Control Board. But at the same time, we were not given any indication that rulemaking was underway, it was on their agenda, it was scheduled or imminent. We saw no sign of that. What we saw was continued discussion without a path forward. Given that background, the structure of this bill is straightforward. There isn't any fiscal impact, there's no expansion of government. It works within the existing authority of the Pesticide Control Board with one simple request. We would like to see you amend the current bill in front of you from may to shall, because the may implement rules were rules the Pesticide Control Board already created with the input from other stakeholders, so it's not news to them, it isn't without them, they were part of it. And shall ensures that the exemptions are carried out. It ensures follow through. The study has been completed, the experts have been consulted. The legislation is simply a move that moves this forward as intended. I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions?
You're welcome.
All right, seeing none, thank you. Carol Foss. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Vice Chair Pearl and remaining members of the committee. My name is Carol Foss. I am Senior Advisor for Science and Policy in New Hampshire Audubon. We are in support of this bill. And in the interest of time, which I realize is marching on, I'm going to turn in my written testimony for your consideration. We urge you to vote this bill ought to pass.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none. Denise, sorry, I can't get the last one. Gallagher, there you go. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Denise Dalaker, and I'm a New Hampshire native plant grower. I'm here to support House Bill 1431. Just to give a background, native plants have evolved with pollinators and wildlife over thousands of years, have symbiotic relationships, and sustain our pollinators and birds. In my work, I see a clear pattern. When landscapes are managed without systematic pesticides, life returns. When they're not, it disappears. Neonics are one of the most widely used insecticides in the world and among the most potent. They are systematic and move through the entire plant, every cell, into pollen and nectar. These systematic chemicals affect the central nervous system of insects, resulting in paralysis and death. The most notable victims of neonicotinoid exposure are pollinator species, which perform a key role in over 1/3 of our food system. This class of insecticides is particularly harmful to bees as accumulated nicotinoids are consumed by adults and stored, concentrated, and fed to developing young. Sublethal effects on native bees include reduced food consumption and reproduction success, decreased worker survival, reduced foraging, and delayed development. Not always immediate death, but steady collapse. Fewer pollinators, fewer birds, and weakening ecosystems we depend on for food and clear water. Systematic pesticides are pushing native pollinators to the edge of ecological collapse, with cascading effects seen globally. Without pollinators, ecosystems collapse. In New Hampshire, that matters. Pollinators support our farms, our lakes and rivers drive our economy. Our communities across the state are investing in native plants to restore habitat and reduce runoff. And when these landscapes rely on systematic pesticides, we undercut those gains. New Hampshire relies on the Pesticide Control Board for oversight, but to date, that process has not produced action on this class of chemicals, leaving a gap between what we know and what we do. Without legislative direction, that gap remains. House Bill 1431 provides a path forward. It sets clear expectations. It creates a timeline, and it ensures accountability for action, not just discussion. It allows New Hampshire to move deliberately, but not indefinitely. At the same time, we already have a working solution. Native plants grown without pesticides support pollinators across their full life cycle, reduce the need for chemical inputs, improve soil and water quality, and create resilient, self-sustaining landscapes. As a grower, I can tell you demand for these plants is rising across New Hampshire because they work and because people are starting to care. This bill aligns policy with what is already working on the ground, and it moves us from discussion to action on a timeline that reflects the urgency of what's at stake. I respectfully urge you to support Bill 1431. Thank you for your time and service.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none.
Thank you.
Chuck Souther. Excuse me. Good morning, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, my name is Chuck Souther. My wife Diane and I own and operate Apple Hill Farm here in Concord, diverse crops. This bill we're talking about above the ground, not below the ground. And I'm here to oppose the bill. This seems to be kind of a broken record for me. But what I would really like to say is that at the March 23rd meeting of the Pesticide Control Board, the board took an affirmative vote to move forward with making these materials restricted use. And I have always supported doing that. Let's get these things off the shelves, out of the hands of people that are not licensed applicators. That's fine. And that's my basic opposition to the bill, is that the Pesticide Control Board can do this, and they have voted to move forward with it. Now I'm going to go off script a little bit. I can't wait to go home and tell my wife how lucky we are. A couple of years ago, we had a grad student do a project, and interestingly, the name of his project was Live Free and Pollinate. And his project was to visit, I think it was 22 different orchards. We were one of them during bloom on our apple trees to collect, trap wild pollinators to see how many there were. To date, he's still trying to identify all those 15,000 samples of wild pollinators. He weeded out the other stuff that wasn't pollinators. On our farm, there were over 100 different species that he's counted so far. I guess we're lucky. We stopped bringing in honeybees years ago, in part because we see so many of these wild pollinators. Everything from little tiny bees to great big bumblebees. They're everywhere. Birds. I got a barn full of barn swallows to the point that everybody that works on the farm knows if you're going to park a tractor in that barn, you better throw something on the seat of the steering wheel, or tomorrow morning you're going to be pretty disgusted. Mm-hmm. Don't even get me going on cedar waxwings, starlings, and the blackbirds that affect our other crops. I guess we're doing something right. That's sort of the bottom line. We see wildlife all over the place. We have a nesting pair of red-tailed hawks, a nesting pair of kestrels on the farm. I watched one Easter morning tear apart a mouse on a fence pole. Kind of gruesome, but interesting just the same. I was glad to hear Representative Bixby point out one thing about the neonicotinoids. They are extremely safe for mammals. That's us. And when we go through our IPM process and get to that point that we've got to start to make a decision, that we've got to do something to control, that we have reached an economic threshold, then it goes down the process of, okay, what am I going to use? And the more tools I've got in my toolbox, the better decision I can make. And one of the first things I always look at when I'm looking at my choices is what are the mammalian toxicities to me as the applicator, to my employees, my customers, and the multitude of neighbors that use our farm as their public walking space. That is one of the spots that neonicotinoids fit in really well. I can't argue the fact that all pesticides are toxic. It's the way it is. And we have to make these choices all the time on what are we going to do, what are the trade-offs, what else are we looking at. And on our farm, we're dedicated IPM growers. We're always interested in all the other insects and all the other beneficial things that we can do. And finally, I was glad to see Xerxes here. With their help and UNH's help, we've got over 4 acres of pollinator plots on our farm. And they're not pretty wildflower plots like you see on The Sound of Music. But if you were a pollinator and you were looking for flowers all summer long, these things on a calm day, it sounds like a chainsaw going in there. There's so many insects in there. It's unbelievable. So I'll leave you with that. This is being taken care of at the Pesticide Control Board, and I don't think this bill is necessary. I'll take questions.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Thanks for coming in today. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Nisa Marks. Good morning, welcome again.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for taking my testimony in support of HB 1431. For the record, I'm Nisa Merks, a wildlife biologist and owner and operator of Sweetview Farm in Henniker. The amended bill overall has the potential to vastly benefit pollinators, but I do want to point out a couple of ways that it could potentially be better for human health and species that aren't pollinators. Neonics are used in lots of non-agricultural ways, which, as you heard from the sponsor say, that's the primary intent of this bill. And having the Pesticide Control Board review those uses is an appropriate delegation of authority, and I support the majority of this bill. There are still 2 potential agricultural uses that do have impacts to human health and wildlife, so I just want to point those out and call attention that that is one of the ways that this bill is a compromise. So first, greenhouse uses. Many types of plants are grown in greenhouses. I'm going to focus just on crops that are grown for human consumption. Because neonics are taken up into a crop plant itself, they can't be washed off or peeled away. So if you are eating anything that has been treated with neonics, you are ingesting the pesticide. Biomonitoring studies have shown that more than 95% of pregnant women who are tested have measurable levels of neonics in their system. And a growing body of credible peer-reviewed research links neonic exposure in the womb to birth defects in the heart and the brain. Adult exposures affect our reproductive systems, alter insulin regulation, change our fat metabolism, and more. So there are still impacts to human health from the exemptions that this bill potentially allows. The second exemption that I would highlight is for spraying neonics on fruit orchards outside of blooms. So that does indeed reduce much of the likely impact on pollinators, which is a great step. However, spraying at other times of year can still have far-ranging and deadly unintended consequences for non-target species because these pesticides are so water-soluble and move quite easily across the landscape, as you've heard. So my point is that this bill is already a compromise. And as a previous speaker said, it is appropriate for the legislature to direct the Pesticide Control Board to take action in this way because there are so many diverse concerns with neonicotinoids and their use. So in sum, I do support HB 1431 as a reasonable compromise in terms of reducing impacts to pollinators and beneficial insects, and in terms of sending it to the Pesticide Control Board. And just wanted to highlight some of the impacts that could still remain from the bill as phrased. So thank you for your consideration. Happy to take questions.
All right, thanks for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Sarah Ruckledge? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning again. My name's Sarah Rockledge, fourth generation farmer at TC Farm. I run and manage the farm. I am only in opposition of this bill because I think that the department, the DAMF Pesticide Board, should be in charge of this. They have consistently demonstrated the expertise needed to oversee the sale and the use of pesticides in New Hampshire. Its decisions are informed by scientific evidence, technical knowledge, and practical experience. The authority should be preserved. The legislature, while critical in knowledge in setting policy direction, does not possess the same level of specialized expertise required to effectively regulate pesticide use, and they should not override the authority of the Pesticide Controls Board. And other than that, I really do support the restricted use of neonics to restricted use pesticide licensed users. It's kind of horrifying when you walk in Home Depot and see the products that we have been tested on. We have to go to seminars and meetings and maintain credits on, and they get these little packets. And I just wanted to, for anyone who's not familiar, this is a 60-page booklet on a neonicotinoid that we have to know back to front, and it is the label of the law. And it has bee warnings on pages 2, 5, and 6 about how we cannot spray during bloom, how these are toxic, and all of the ways we are not supposed to use this. And one of the really cool things in the orchard is that we maintain between 15 and 25 hives at any one time across our farm. Our beekeeper assures us that it is very easy to see when the bees are poisoned. We had 100% success rate overwintering, and he says that he has not seen poisoning anywhere on the farm. Also, if anyone has honeybees on their farm, they know that they are super lazy compared to the wild bees, and the wild bees are really the best pollinators. So we want to keep the wild bees around. They work way harder than the honeybees. They are super lazy. That's what I got.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Caitlin Graber? Sorry, take your time. Nope, push till the red light.
Oh,
There you go.
there's the red light. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to thank the committee for allowing me this time to testify. My name is Caitlin Graber. I'm from Greenville, New Hampshire, and I'm here in support of this bill. I guess we've heard a lot of really good testimony on the science. I guess what I wanted to mention is that we're going to hear a lot of, the committee is going to have to hear a lot of bills on pesticides, I get the feeling, in the near future. We heard about SCARs last week, and now we're hearing about neonics. And what I want people to think about is to sort of take the long view here. So the book Silent Spring, which I have a copy of, which came out in 1962, okay, warned us against using DDT and other pesticides. Since this book has been published, our pesticide use has increased.
It peaked in the 1980s and then went down a little bit, but continues to be much higher than it was in Rachel Carson's time. So her book, her warning, really did not work. And in that time, in those last few decades, we have seen an increase in pests. So mosquitoes have gone up, ticks have gone up, rats and mice have increased, agricultural pests have gone up. So this is not exactly, a good indicator that pesticides are working. Okay, so we need to take a long view. Now, you can say that that's correlation versus cause effect. I would argue it's cause effect, but even if we just look at the correlation there, obviously pesticides are not working. They're not a long-term solution to our problems. And integrated pest management is, of course, our go-to, but I think we pay a lot of lip service to that. I'm not sure that it's actually, applied in practice. I think some farmers are doing that, which is awesome, but I do think that we need to respond to the biodiversity crisis. It's an urgent situation, and I think we need to start prioritizing it. The other thing about Silent Spring and epiphany I had is that the Silent Spring she was referring to was not in 1962. The Silent Spring she's referring to is now. It's been gradually coming for, decades. And so this is where we are. We're in what Rachel Carson called the Silent Spring. And I think it's time to prioritize nature. And I have a background in entomology. I have a biology degree and an entomology master's degree, and I've been teaching, so I'm a teacher. So I brought the committee and anybody here a reading assignment. So I brought several copies of Silent Spring. If you haven't read it, I suggest you do, and if you have read it, it may be time to read it again, because this is where we are right now. And so I think because we're going to be hearing a lot of pesticide testimony, I think it's important for the committee to educate themselves on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, seeing none, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
I brought 6 copies. I hope that's enough.
Awesome, thank you. Cynthia Walter, not quite sure on the last name.
So,
Good morning, welcome.
hello again. So, thank you again for hearing my testimony. So, I want again to emphasize that I have been teaching and working with my students for 35 years to go to farmers and see what's going on in their farms, and that's directly relevant to this bill that I do support. First of all, I want to note that many of the students I have are also growers of non-agricultural plants and such. And so I want to begin my testimony with the benefits, the economic benefits from this bill, because when we have a statewide bill that uses no neonics on non-agricultural plants, then all of those growers can advertise and have a competitive advantage against the states around us that have mixed rules about landscape plants and so forth. So our growers from New Hampshire will have a competitive advantage. With the neonics on public lands, then New Hampshire is known as a place where visitors, and tourism is a huge economic business here, that Granite State can have a place to safely enjoy our forests and lakes. Those who raise the crops as livestock, we've heard that they're all in favor of having them be registered, and indeed so important, because right now some wells, drinking water wells, and contamination is a huge issue that my students and I have documented for farmers. And so many of them are spending so much money on bottled water because they don't trust what's in their wells. And that's because they or their neighbors are using neonics and other pesticides in excess. And so this requirement on their part is just unethical for them to have to buy bottled water as farmers. They also, the cyanobacteria and the problems in their lakes that they use for irrigation water, that's another thing we documented. The economic burden on the farmer is that they now have to purchase an aerator to keep the irrigation ponds functional. and reduce the algal growth. Well, that's a terrible expense. And now we see the connection with that with neonics. Again, neonics on the property land, but also on the surrounding land. So we have to have these under control. The Pesticide Control Board, I'm pleased to see that they have finally moved to have it be registered as pesticide applicators, but we need them to regulate the timing of the moves of the uses of neonics, and in regard to the neighbors around the property, to make sure that the neighbors are not being harmed just because the landowner has a flowering regime of a certain kind, but the neighbor has a different flower. You know, the cherries flower at a different time than the apples and so forth. So we need to, I don't think that this bill and the legislators can work in that detail. So I'd like to see the legislation give the opportunity for the Pesticide Control Board to do its job, to get the details right, but you need to provide that momentum. The final thing that I wanted to mention was the last but not least is the importance of the requirement to have more education about the alternatives. And this is important because the overuse of the neonics, for many cases, is resulting in human poisonings, inadvertent, and in some cases accidental and so forth. So we have to we cannot say blanketly that neonics have no mammalian toxicology or low mammalian toxicology. That has to be revised. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Fawn Gaudet. You knew you signed up next, didn't you? I saw you getting up. Turn your mic on, please.
Hi again, my name's Fawn Gaudet. I forgot to mention that I'm the leader of New Hampshire Saves Our Pollinators Coalition, and I'm so thankful for this opportunity to be here. A lot of these experts and great activists and everybody have already shared a lot of things I was going to say again. I want to say I support this bill. This bill would be a first step forward to protecting our biodiversity. It is my hope that one day we can move to chemical organic free practice. On that note, organic practice has been successful, and maybe working with farmers together and that are not organic and discussing ways to help them, everybody move forward, would help prevent toxic inputs that are happening, that are affecting our biodiversity. There are a great number of organic seeds that are good for the environment, and they have been effective for millennials for a very long time. And there is a great degree of pollinator decline, which I mentioned before, and pollinator and neonics are not safe for human use. They're not safe for mammals. And it's really important to understand that this class of insecticides does harm children's behavior. It affects pollinators in lethal and sublethal effects. So I really encourage this bill to move forward as a first step in New Hampshire. Second, I just wanted to share that Beyond Pesticides from Washington, D.C. submitted testimony. And they also, you should have it, but I don't know, can I give you a copy of it? You should have it. Yeah, and so also they talk about effects of birds, which have been mentioned, and they also talk about the effects of mammals to mammal health, including deer, and there's a pretty solid study saying the harm that it does to that. They also talk about effects to human health, and that one thing is research finds that neonics can act as endocrine hormone disruptors at very low doses, and can even result in hormone-dependent breast cancer. And it can also, neonics have been found to transfer from mother to fetus to the placenta, presenting in higher risks of birth defects. So, and then there's also neurological impacts, memory loss. So using these things, it's really critical for us to take a first step and protecting our biodiversity. And alternatives, I would really suggest moving forward to chemical-free alternatives. And this is beyond pesticides. I believe you have it, but it's okay for me to give it to you as well. It's solid, scientific, peer-reviewed information.
Thank you for your testimony. Any
Thank you.
questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you. David Trumbull? Good morning, welcome back.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm David Trumbull from the town of Ware. I support the bill because it moves us a step in the right direction. It makes it a restricted use pesticide and there shall be rules. I would like to see the bill go further and to have the maze be strengthened. So I'm going to take a little detour and go into constitutional law just for a second. When the Administrative Procedures Act, what's that?
You have 3 minutes, use them how you like.
Okay. When the Administrative Procedures Act was rewritten about 1981, the legislature wrote to the Supreme Court and said, what's the constitutional story here? The court said that you are the supreme lawmakers and that the executive branch implements the law. So although under statute, the Pesticide Control Board has the right to establish policies and goals for pesticides, they get that power because you gave them that power. And so if they're not acting strongly enough or they're not clear on where to go, you have the right to say, we would like you to act more strongly. So I think on this bill here, it would make sense to say you shall do a couple things, but then all those, where those mays come in, if you're not willing to go all the way to a ban, then there should be some stronger regulations put in effect. So category 1 would be non-agricultural use, like turf and state lands and buildings and non-forestry. There's no reason that you can't say to them, we would like you to make regulations that will reduce the usage of these pesticides in these areas, or in certain cases, say that they should restrict them completely, say, for example, on turf. I think that's what Connecticut did. Then on agriculture, you could say, we would like you to find ways to reduce the use of neonics as a policy, and then specifically talk about the timing or whether or not a farm is adjacent to a school or to somebody else's home. The point here is that there's a lot of evidence, and none of it's been denied, that we've known for at least a decade that these are dangerous pesticides. It affects human health, the ecosystem, insects, aquatic life. This bill is a step in the right direction, but I would ask you to go further and to say that we instruct you, the Pesticide Control Board, to do more. Add something into this bill that makes it clear that we're not content with you coming out of this doing nothing. Now, because the word may does not require any action. So please look at this and say, make the Pesticide Control Board take action, sit and talk about it, figure out what you want to do. Do you want these things in your lakes? Do you want it in your river? Do you want it into the food system? If you want it to be reduced, it's up to you to give them a mandate, and you have the constitutional power to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none.
Thanks, sir.
Pooh Sprague? Good morning and welcome.
Morning, everybody. I was originally going to read a letter, but I think with any amount of luck, I can be quicker. I'm here on behalf of my family. We have a 100-acre farm up in the Connecticut River Valley that is spread out in Cornish, Plainfield, and Windsor, Vermont. We use little pesticides. Our concern today is twofold: the future of neonics, which we use a little of. And I would say at the inset that we use it because it replaces about 4 to 7 sprays on potatoes for Colorado potato beetle. And we understand, or we believe, that the half-life of that particular product in that crop puts it out of reach of any pollinators by the time potatoes bloom. So as Chuck said, I'm the last guy to be here to be advocating for pesticides. It's a very uncomfortable place to be. But I've also heard a lot of passionate arm waving and things. I think one of the representatives said that, oh, it's worse than DDT, it's much worse than DDT. And, what does that mean? The LD50 to human mammalian toxicity, as I understand it, DDT was perfectly safe for humans because we used it on the Army for ticks and well, people coming out of combat. So it has well, okay, we won't get too far down that road. A neonic does not have that long lasting ability that I understand. Okay, so here we are. We have two differing opinions of this thing. So I'm not so concerned about the future of neonics. What I am concerned about is the process. As we know, there's a lot of passion. I think introducing a legislative committee into the work of the Department of Pesticides is going to politicize this whole thing. And I think that's the wrong precedent. So that's basically what I got to say about that.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Thanks for coming down. Angela
Oh,
Brennan?
if I may say one other
sure.
thing.
Go ahead, one question.
You know, I didn't know how to put in a letter properly, and I didn't mean any, but you know, the state legislature would be the last place I would go for expertise on growing strawberries. I don't think they're a good, I don't think they're going to be great about doing pesticides.
Thank you. Angela Brennan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Angela Brennan. I'm the president of AB Strategies. I'm here on behalf of my client, the Household and Commercial Products Association. The Household and Commercial Products Association represents approximately 250 well-known companies that produce products that are on the shelves of our grocery stores and hardware stores that Granite Staters purchase every single day. We are opposed to this bill for a number of reasons, which you will see in the testimony that's been submitted to your email addresses. I'd just like to bring attention to a couple of issues, including that this would be a departure of policy that has been adopted in other states, and that if the neonicotinoids are reclassified as a restricted substance, this would limit access to safe, affordable pest control that many households rely on to protect their homes, outdoor spaces, and pests. As a result, this bill would disproportionately affect residents with limited financial resources and reduce the availability of effective, accessible, affordable pest management tools. We've heard testimony today that talked about making sure that everyone has the appropriate tools in their toolbox for managing their own individual issues with pests. We've also heard testimony that, and this bill seems to suggest that neonicotinoids are fit under one umbrella, and the fact of the matter is that neonicotinoids are is a broad category that categorizes, or this bill seeks to categorize these as one thing, but neonicotinoids is a range of things. And the products that our consumers are purchasing on the shelves contain a smaller concentration of effective ingredient than the professional applicators. This bill seems to suggest that professional applicators should be the only ones using the products, but they're using products containing neonicotinoids at a higher concentration than the average Granite Staters getting from their local grocery store or hardware store. Recognizing the difference between the two is really important. In the testimony, you'll see that the HCPA has a number of recommendations for your consideration for exemptions should this bill move forward. I'd also like to suggest that the committee consider the recommendation of creating educational documents that would inform Granite Staters on how to best follow the instructions on such products, which may be helpful to making sure that everybody's following the rules. So I'll keep my testimony to that. And again, HCPA is opposed to this bill, but we stand ready to assist the committee and anyone in determining what might be appropriate going forward.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Rosenwald with a question.
Thanks for taking my question. We've been told that Fish and Game has restricted the use or prohibited the use of these products on land that they control. Did your organization oppose that move in 2017 when they did it?
I'm not entirely sure in 2017 if HCPA was active in New Hampshire at that time. However, we seek to ensure that policies are adopted that are backed by science. And some of the things that we've seen in this bill seem to suggest that this would create a ban on products that would be available to consumers. And so, we're open to hearing the concerns of the committee and working together to adopt a policy that may be most appropriate.
Thanks.
Further question? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Rob Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rob Johnson, representing New Hampshire Farm Bureau as the Federation's policy director, and we do oppose House Bill 1431. We believe passage of the bill would set a concerning precedent where the legislature will bypass the expertise of the board and directly dictate pesticide regulation, essentially telling the board what the science is. I'd like to touch on some of the particular sections of the bill on page 1, lines 19 through 21, and that's the language that requires a restricted use. And I'll be passing on a letter. We don't necessarily oppose that again, but we think that decision should be the Pesticide Control Board, which is has the expertise looking at the big picture. Starting at line 22 on page 1 through page 2, that's not necessary. The board already has that authority. And then on page 3, dealing with the notification, again, the board has that authority, but we're concerned that language does not align with integrated pest management, and that it's which is something we would think that everybody should and would want to promote. As I said, I've got a letter here that I'll pass out. The pesticide, we have asked the board, requested they take action post haste to classify neonicotinoids as a restricted use. And we've gone, we think, a step beyond. We've requested not only for foliar applications, but also seed treatments as well, which we believe the board has the authority to do. And, as with the restriction, it then is in the hands of licensed applicators who have passed the test and are continuing education on it. And in closing, I'd just like to say that I believe I said this to you last week, talking about the rodenticide bill, but we liken this to fish and game hunting seasons. Up into the early 1980s, I believe it was, the legislature set our hunting seasons, and our wildlife populations in some instances paid the price. And now that is, seasons are set with the expertise of our biologists. We think that's the way it should be, and liken it to the Pesticide Control Board and their expertise. I'll close there, and thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Anybody else that I missed on the sheet? All right, with that, I'm going to close the hearing on 1431. And we will open up the hearing on House Bill 1013. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't think. Representative Swett. Folks, I have another hearing I have to get to, so if you want to take your conversations outside. Thank you. Do we have anybody here? Judy, you're going to introduce? All right, Representative Aaron, you are recognized to introduce House Bill 1013. Folks, could you take your conversations out? We have another hearing we have to do. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Representative Aaron?
Thank you so much. For the record, my name is Representative Judy Aaron, representing the towns of Ackworth, Goshen, Langdon, Leominster, and Washington, Sullivan County District 4. I serve as chairman in the House for Environment and Agriculture Committee. And I'm here today to introduce House Bill 1013. Representative Harvey was the original sponsor, but I wrote the amendment that is this bill today. So, and she was unable to come. So I told her I would take care of introducing the bill to this committee. And good morning, and thank you so much for hearing me. So the original bill had to do with outright banning contests involving pigs that we see at our regional fairs, our local, our county fairs, and so forth. The claim was that in some instances, some of the fairs, the animals were not being treated properly. They were being put in plastic bags with a little hole cut out for the snout, and they weren't. They would be hot days. They wouldn't be given water or food after the event. That there were too many children. Just a whole lot of things that were not really the best practice for these kinds of events. But my committee also heard that these events are very popular. They are very, in many fairs, they are run very, very well. And we did not see the sense in outright banning them. Instead, we amended the bill to say that in order to promote educational, humane, and safe events for not only contestants and livestock, that there should be a published best handling practices document put together by the Department of Agriculture. And that in this document, it would signal to the organizers of the events the best way to run these events, how to handle the pigs during release and capture, what to do for supervision of the contestants, give guidance and training for individuals supervising or assisting, because what we also heard in testimony was that in events, some of the events, they had rules, and maybe in some instances those rules were not followed. So we want to just make sure that there's sort of some kind of guidelines put out by the department that these fair organizers can follow, which would make sure that these events are not only run properly, but also are safe for the animals and for people who are participating. We also wanted to say that the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food would also be able to adopt rules relative to the enforcement of these best practices, so that if they got some complaints from people saying that, something was not run properly, animals were harmed in some way or whatever, that in order to deal with those complaints, that the department could say then, oh, well, if you're not following your own rules and best practices, we can tell you that there's a period of time where you cannot run these events again until you get your rules straightened out and how you run these events. So that's basically what this bill does. Is it will go a long way to help a lot of these fair organizers and give them direction in how to run successful and fair and safe events for contestants and for the animals, most importantly for the animals involved.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Sarah Rosenwald, do you have any questions?
Okay.
It's only you and I.
Well, thank you very much. I do hope that you look favorably upon this legislation and give it an OTP. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Yep.
Kurt. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, thank you. I'm Kurt Ehrenberg, State Director of Humane World for Animals. We were in support of this bill, the original bill. And I guess this, the amendment sets out some standards, so it's better than nothing at this point, would be our position. We do think it is a cruel practice to be chasing pigs around, but this bill sets out some rules that we can stand behind and work with. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Rob Johnson? I will say it's not always every day I see both of you in support, in the same position on a bill. It's notable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Roswell. Rob Johnson, representing New Hampshire Farm Bureau Federation's policy director, and we are in support of the bill. We do not believe that pig scrambles are inhumane when properly overseen. At the House hearing, we did suggest to the committee that the department be tasked with developing best handling practices. And we believe that Chair Aaron and the committee did a nice job in developing those. And it's an opportunity, one, we think to, as I think you probably understand, it wouldn't be recommended handling practices if you want to capture pigs to send a bunch of children out and chase them down. So hopefully over time this will develop in educating the public about animal handling and the proper way of catching animals and making sure that agriculture puts its best foot forward. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions? Rob, could you step out and see if Pooh was out there? He had signed up, he wanted to speak, but I don't see him in here. Thank you. All right, Joan O'Brien. Okay. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. I have photos.
Thank you.
So my name's Joan O'Brien, and I am the president of the New Hampshire Animal Rights League, but I'm just speaking on my own behalf today. And I support HB 1013 as amended to come up with some best practices and enforce them at the scrambles. I commend the committee on their work on this. It was a very pleasant surprise. I have been to 2 pig scrambles, so I can't speak for all of them. I went to Deerfield in 2023 and Cheshire in 2024. I was very impressed with Deerfield. I was worried, but then it really went very well. Parents were in there with their children, making sure that they didn't treat the pigs, cruelly. Cheshire was a little bit disappointing, and as the pictures I've passed out show, the pigs were put into the seed bags. It was a very hot day, and after the scramble, the kids were hot and thirsty, and the announcer said, kids, we've got water up here for you. But meanwhile, all these pigs are like writhing on the ground in bags, and nobody was thinking to give them water. So I'm very happy that we're going to have some rules put in place. I have 2 caveats to raise. The first is that the rules, it could be confusing for children because we're going to be teaching them to have empathy and compassion for these pigs and treat them well. However, most of these pigs are being raised for food. So on the one hand, compassion, later on, harden your heart and send the pig off to slaughter. That's one caveat. And the second caveat is that this bill might mislead us into thinking we've addressed a serious animal welfare concern, where in fact, most of the animals raised for food, Senator Pearl knows this, are raised in windowless sheds, about 99% of the pigs in windowless sheds. They never see the light of day. And there are things done to them that would be illegal if they were done to a dog or a cat. So anyone who's buying pork or bacon or ham in the grocery store or at a restaurant or at the State House cafeteria, that's what you're having. So it's great that our scrambles might be a little bit more humane, but if you're concerned about animals being treated well, you should really look into what's happening to your food. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Since I'm the only one here, I would guess I would be the only one presenting questions. But I think I'll leave it at that. Commissioner, why don't you come up and let us know what your concerns are? And I guess if there's one question that I will ask that maybe you can fit into is what the current oversight is on these events now.
Thank you for the record, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the staff. I am.
Hey, by default, I'm now the best looking member of the committee.
That is true, Senator. I can't believe that I had to go back out and put money in the meter for a 10:20 meeting, and I had put enough to get me to 11:15, and here we are, almost at 11:30. But I am Sean Jasper, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food. I'm opposed in part to the bill as written. The department did not testify on the bill as it was introduced because it did not involve us. It was simply a ban. So we did not have any interest in that. And as much as I appreciate all the hard work that the Environment and Agriculture Committee does on bills, sometimes they don't think to talk to the department that they are dragging into legislation. And so without any conversation with us, this bill was amended. There are a couple problems with that. And I'll just start off with some basic questions, I guess. How many of these events take place around the state? I certainly don't know. We suspect they probably take place at some old home days and other events, but we have no idea where they are, how many there are. Where are they held? And it is pretty clear, although from Chairman Aaron's testimony, she believes that we could investigate after the fact. We are not an investigatory agency. When we receive complaints, particularly about animal welfare, we go out and view what is going on. Unless we have people on site, we are being asked to investigate. That is not something that any of my staff is trained to do. That's not something that I would propose that we should be doing. That's a police matter. That's what the police do. That's not what the Department of Agriculture should do, in my opinion, and I don't know how we would do it. And so if we were to be there to view this, we'd have to know where they were held, when they were held, who was holding them, and I would have to direct people to be there on the weekends, because I think we know that all of these events are likely to be held on outside of normal business hours. And so that becomes a directive of the legislature to put pig scrambles above work on actual things we are normally tasked with doing, like animal cruelty cases. So I'm really concerned about that. I could fully support Section 1 of the bill, because that just allows us to put some best practices out there, consulting with experts. Section 2 is very problematic for us. Best practices, I think, Senator, are really used as safe harbors. So if you are following best practices in agriculture, you are protected in a way. You use that as a defense. And now this is turning it on its head and saying, if you don't follow best practices, you are subject to penalties. I'm very uncomfortable with doing that. And in terms of us coming up with rules and penalties, again, very uncomfortable with that. I can't catch up with all the rules that we currently have in place. There's rules that have been put in place several years ago, we still have not been able to develop because we were so far behind. I have a part-time person doing that. No one else in the department is really experts on writing rules, and it's a very cumbersome process. I was very naive, even having served on administrative rules when I was in the legislature. I did not realize how bad it was from the other side of the, and so I'd never be able to get these rules in place in the time that being asked, because there are so many that are pressing, that are expiring, that have fees attached to them. And I don't think you'd want me to do that either. So in closing, I'm fine with section 1, but I ask you not to implement section 2 of this bill.
So back to my question, is there any
Oh.
current oversight now?
Not that I'm aware of, other than the organizations that are hosting them. And I'm not aware of those. I know that I've seen protesters at Cheshire. I haven't seen any at Deerfield, but I haven't been observing either of the events. And those are the only 2 that I personally am aware of.
But there is a basic expectation that they're going to handle animals in a humane manner and not be, providing any situation that would be considered cruel by our statutes.
That is certainly the case, and I think that if there were those type of cases you've heard about, that would be a police matter and could be, the people could be prosecuted under the current laws. Those are animal cruelty laws, and I think those cases we heard of, or the case we heard of, might rise to that level. But I think it would be wise for us to have best practices out there, and I think we could do that before the 2027 season.
Senator Rosenwald, any questions? All right. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to speak on House Bill 1013? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. Do we have anybody here to introduce House Bill 1425? All right, seeing no one here, I will introduce it here. I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 1425 FN. This bill simplifies wetland permitting for small projects and gives the Department of Environmental Services the authority to create an alternative adaptive permitting process for emergency or natural disaster response. And with that, I will call on Darlene Forst from the Department of Environmental Services. Good morning and welcome. You didn't want to testify on the pig scrambles?
No.
All right, fair enough.
It's nice to be the least controversial thing.
I think you've got that one nailed today.
Good morning. My name is Darlene Forst. I'm the Bureau Administrator for the Wetlands Bureau at the Department of Environmental Services. We have handed in our written letter of testimony, so in the interest of time, I will not belabor the point. The Department of Environmental Services supports this bill. There are 2 key provisions of this bill. One is we have redundant processes for minimum impact projects. We are in the middle of a database design. By eliminating these and going with just one process, which is the shortest process, which is the PBN, it's the least time. It's by 5 days our shortest process. This allows us to simplify our new database design, which A, makes it more cost effective, and B, means there's less things to break. So we would appreciate being able to, the law language which would consolidate everything under permit by notification. The second thing we would like to do is have clear rulemaking authority to adopt rules that would allow us to have adaptive permitting in cases of natural disasters or emergencies, so that we can better handle projects through the triage phase, that immediate response phase, triage phase to, you don't always get to the right decision in a disaster immediately. Sometimes there's an assessment phase where you need to stabilize a project, and then a long-term engineering phase for your final repairs. Right now, our system doesn't really allow us to do that well, and we'd like to have clear rulemaking authority to develop something of that nature with the help of other state response agencies such as HCM and DOT. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for your testimony. So in no way this makes, in no way does it give any less oversight for DES on these projects. It just streamlines the permitting.
We have two processes which have all the same identical things in the application process, but one's 30 days and one's 25 days. So we'd like to eliminate the 30-day process and just use the 25-day process.
Seems reasonable to me. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. Anybody else that would like to testify on House Bill 1425? Seeing none, we will close the hearing. And we are not going to exec anything today since it's down to you and me, and I know we're meeting again on Thursday. So with that, we are done for today. Thank you.